Hello, this is Adrian Alexander, one of the community managers of ACES Caribbean Community, here to share with you a brief update on this past week's activities on our community. Hope everybody's doing well. I know that those who are in the metropolitan areas are experiencing the hint of spring coming in. So that's excellent for you guys, even as we continue to bask in the warmth down here in the Caribbean. Don't be envious. All right, so we start things off with on the left-hand side, kids need more time with grandparents, and this was our post on Monday, really highlighting how the emotional health of children is actually improved upon the more time they spend with their grandparents. And of course, this is conditional upon grandparents being safe for the children to be around. But there's a tendency from the research that shows that children tend to receive more unconditional love from grandparents. They have a lot of that support, whether it's emotional, and even as children grow, they benefit from the financial support of grandparents, either in actual monetary terms, putting together funds for college education, or simply in the provision of necessities and presents as they celebrate or mark milestones in their lives. Another blog post focused on how we can prevent the incarceration of our young people by adopting trauma-informed approaches, and that is, of course, within the criminal justice system. Here in the Caribbean, there are so many parents who unfortunately are bringing their children before the courts, claiming that the children are beyond control. And sometimes the children's behavior may be criminalized when it's actually only a response to a memory from some past traumatic incident or a reaction to some abusive treatment being meted out to the child. So looking at how all of those in the criminal justice system and the childcare system can actually prevent the incarceration of our children by adopting a trauma-informed lens. Next item here is actually a post that was published on the 25th of March, and that's addressing the issue of, is there a link between ACEs and human trafficking? So why the 25th of March, you ask? Well, here's why. That actually is the date marking the anniversary in 1807 when Great Britain passed the Slave Trade Act in its parliament. That act abolished the traffic of African slaves throughout the British Empire. So it's, of course, a pivotal date throughout the Commonwealth and especially for us here in the Caribbean. So we'll be looking at issues of the generational and intergenerational trauma from African slavery, the issue, of course, of human trafficking and whether ACEs contribute to it, and of course, vice versa. So on the 1st of April, there'll be a blog post highlighting that in relation to Trinidad and Tobago, because that actually, the 1st of April in 2011, was when our Trafficking in Persons Bill was brought into Parliament, and it subsequently became the Trafficking in Persons Act. So we'll be looking at that on the 1st of April, but thereafter on the 25th of every month, we'll be publishing a post with respect to ACEs and human trafficking, and maybe a little more frequently than that, but most certainly on the 25th of every month. And finally, we were looking also at the issue of grief and crime, and this was based on some reflections from a program that I did at the maximum security prison here in Trinidad and Tobago with some men who had been convicted of violent crimes. And in exploring the issue of grief and loss in their lives and the early ages at which many of them first encountered grief and how that grief was often as boys, they were stigmatized if they showed emotion. We were able to see an unraveling of their behavior, their emotional state, their ability to regulate themselves, and their descent into juvenile delinquency and subsequent criminal activities, all flowing from their initial encounters with grief, because all of the men were able to say that before those incidents, they had happy childhoods. Some of them had some abusive childhoods, of course, but there's definitely something that we need to explore where there's a link between grief, unresolved grief, and subsequent criminal activities. Before I go, just want to put a plug in for you to visit our Twitter and Instagram accounts and see some of the things that we're posting there. They're usually different content, some similar, but a lot of additional content that we post in our Twitter feed as well as our Instagram account. So you'll find the links on our ACES Caribbean community page to Twitter and Instagram. So that's it for us. And I really want to wish each and every one a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Today is Friday, and I know so many of us have had a long week. And I will want to encourage you to spend time with family, with loved ones, doing so safely, of course, observing all public health protocols. And we'll see you again next week, God willing, for another update. So cheers to one and all from ACES Caribbean Community. My name again, Adrian Alexander. Thanks so much for your time. Bye-bye.